The massive warship Sovereign's Pride floated in the darkness of space. Inside its giant meeting room, the galaxy's strongest warriors sat around a metal table. The room buzzed with tension as different alien species argued about their next move. Captain Jake Morrison sat quietly in the back corner with his small team. Lieutenant Amy Price checked her datapad while Sergeant Tony Clark cleaned his rifle. Communications Officer Lisa Ward listened to radio chatter through her headset. The four humans made no noise as the larger aliens debated. At the front of the room, General Vex Korvath of the Krillian Empire appeared on a huge screen. His reptilian face showed sharp teeth as he spoke. You have 1 day to surrender the Nexari colonies. If you refuse, we will destroy every living thing on those worlds. The screen went black. Silence filled the room for a moment. Then Commander Thex Ironhide of the Vorthan species slammed his massive fist on the table. The sound echoed like thunder. We attack now. My people fear nothing. Our bones are harder than steel. Our skin stops laser fire. We will crush these Krillian lizards. Thex stood up to his full 8-foot height. His natural armor plates gleamed under the lights. Other Vorthan warriors behind him nodded and growled their agreement. They had won hundreds of battles by simply charging forward and smashing through enemy lines. High Priestess Sarah Windcaller of the Zephyrian people floated slightly above her chair. Her crystalline skin glowed with inner light. Brute force is not always the answer, Commander Ironhide. My people can channel pure energy. We can destroy their ships from great distances without risking lives. She raised her hand and bright plasma danced between her fingers. The energy crackled and sparked. One focused beam can cut through any armor. We should strike fast and clean. The insectoid Chitrak representatives clicked and buzzed in their strange language. Hive Queen Zek spoke through her translator device. The swarm offers millions of fighters. Each drone fears no death. Each drone can tear through metal with claws sharper than diamonds. We will overwhelm them with numbers. Behind her, hundreds of smaller Chitrak soldiers moved as one unit. Their black eyes reflected no emotion. They existed only to fight and die for their queen. Commander Ironhide snorted. Your bugs are small and weak. One good hit destroys them. But there are millions of us, Hive Queen Zek replied calmly. Can you say the same about your people? High Priestess Windcaller's glow grew brighter. Quality matters more than quantity. One of my energy masters can destroy 1,000 of your drones. Then let us see who destroys more Krillian ships. Hive Queen Zek clicked back. The argument grew louder. Other species joined in. The Corvin showed off their ability to phase through solid matter. The Thresh demonstrated their mind control powers. The Drakari breathed small flames to prove their fire immunity. Each species believed they were the strongest. Each had won great victories using their natural gifts. Each looked down on the others as inferior. Through it all, the humans remained silent in the back. They took notes and listened carefully. Other aliens glanced at them sometimes with mixtures of pity and amusement. Everyone knew humans were the weakest species in the coalition. They had no natural armor like the Vorthan. They could not control energy like the Zephyrians. They could not survive in space or breathe fire or read minds. They were small, soft, and slow, but they were useful for support tasks. Humans were good at organizing supplies and fixing equipment. They could handle communications and navigation. When the real fighting started, humans stayed safely in the rear where they belonged. Admiral Rex Steelclaw, the highest-ranking Vorthan, finally called for order. Enough! We will use all our strengths. Vorthan forces will lead the assault. Our ships are strongest and can ram through their lines. Zephyrian light cruisers will follow, High Priestess Windcaller agreed. We will provide long-range energy support. Chitrak swarms will deploy fighters to overwhelm their defenses, added Hive Queen Zek. Other species nodded and agreed to their roles. Each would contribute their special abilities to the battle. Admiral Steelclaw looked toward the humans in the back. Captain Morrison, your people will handle logistics and communications as usual. Stay behind our main forces and coordinate supplies. Jake. Morrison stood up and nodded. Understood, Admiral. We'll provide whatever support you need. The other aliens barely noticed this exchange. Of course, the humans would stay in the back. Of course, they would handle safe, easy jobs while the real warriors did the dangerous fighting. As the meeting broke up, aliens filed out in groups. They talked excitedly about the coming battle. Vorthon warriors boasted about how many enemy ships they would destroy. Zephyrians discussed energy patterns and plasma formations. Kitrak drones buzzed about optimal swarm tactics. The humans waited until everyone else left. Then they gathered around Captain Morrison. "Amy, what's our analysis?" Morrison asked quietly. Lieutenant Price checked her datapad. 300 Krillian ships confirmed. Heavy armor, regenerative hulls, plasma cannons. Standard formation patterns based on previous encounters. Tony, equipment status? Sergeant Clark smiled slightly. "All systems green, Captain. The special packages are loaded and ready." Lisa, communications? Officer Ward adjusted her headset. "Monitoring all frequencies. I'm tracking 17 different Krillian command signals and 43 tactical channels." Morrison nodded. "Good. We'll continue passive observation during the initial engagement. Let the others make first contact while we gather data." "How long do you think they'll last?" Amy asked. Morrison considered this. "The Vorthons are tough but predictable. The Zephyrians are powerful but drain themselves quickly. The Kitrak have numbers but no individual skill. Against Krillian regenerative armor and superior tactics, maybe 4 hours before they start taking serious losses." "And then?" Tony asked. Morrison's expression grew cold. "Then we show them why humans don't need natural armor or energy powers or hive minds. We have something better." "What's that?" Lisa asked, though she already knew the answer. "Patience," Morrison replied, "and the willingness to do whatever it takes to win." The humans left the meeting room quietly. Behind them, the galaxy's strongest. Warriors prepared for battle, confident in their abilities. None of them suspected that the small, weak humans had been studying every species for years. None of them realized that staying in the back gave the humans the perfect position to observe everyone's strengths and weaknesses. None of them understood that humans had learned long ago that the deadliest predator is the one nobody sees coming. The Coalition fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace. Soon they would face the Krillian Empire in battle. The galaxy's mightiest warriors would prove their strength and courage, and the humans would wait patiently in the back, taking notes and preparing, to teach everyone a lesson about what real strength looked like. The Coalition fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Nexari system. What they saw made even the bravest warriors pause. 300 Krillian warships hung in space like a wall of death. Each ship was massive, covered in thick armor, plates that could regenerate damage within minutes. The Krillian Empire had brought their entire war fleet to crush the peaceful Nexari colonies. On the planets below, billions of innocent people waited in terror. The Nexari were farmers and artists, not fighters. They had no weapons, no armies, no way to defend themselves. If the Coalition failed, every living thing on those worlds would die. Admiral Rex Steelclaw stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Iron Hammer. Around him, Vorthon warriors prepared for battle. Their natural armor gleamed as they checked weapons and equipment. "All ships, this is Admiral Steelclaw." His voice boomed across the communication channels. "Today we show these reptilian cowards what happens when they threaten the innocent. Vorthon forces advance." The Vorthon dreadnoughts moved forward like unstoppable mountains. Each ship was built like its crew, thick, heavy, and designed to survive anything. Vorthon battle doctrine was simple. Get close to the enemy and smash them to pieces. Behind them came the Zephyrian light cruisers. These ships seemed to dance through space, powered by pure thought and energy. High Priestess Sarah Windcaller stood in her crystal chamber, her body glowing brighter as she prepared devastating attacks. The Chitrak deployed last. Thousands of small fighter craft poured from their carrier ships like angry insects. Each fighter held a single drone pilot with no fear of death and reflexes faster than any other species could match. The Krillian fleet responded immediately. Their ships moved into defensive formations while energy weapons began charging. Admiral Zeth Bloodscale, commander of the Krillian force, opened a communication channel. "Coalition fools. His reptilian voice hissed across space. You face the might of the Krillian Empire. We are born for war. We feel no pain. We know no fear. Your pathetic alliance will break like glass against our strength. Admiral Steelclaw laughed. Big words from a lizard who hides behind armor plating. Let's see how tough you really are. The first Vorthan ships reached the Krillian lines. Massive energy beams lit up space as both sides opened fire. The Vorthan dreadnought Stonebreaker rammed directly into a Krillian heavy cruiser. Both ships exploded in a ball of fire and metal. But the Krillian ship began to reform. Its organic armor plating grew back over the damaged sections. Within minutes, it was ready to fight again. Impossible, Admiral Steelclaw growled. How can they repair damage so quickly? High Priestess Windcaller's voice came over the radio. Their biology allows rapid regeneration, but pure energy can overwhelm their healing ability. Watch this. Brilliant! Beams of plasma shot from the Zephyrian ships. The energy tore through Krillian hulls like paper. Several enemy ships exploded completely, their regenerative systems destroyed, but the effort drained the Zephyrian pilots. High Priestess Windcaller staggered as her life force poured into the attack. Other Zephyrian energy masters collapsed from exhaustion. The Chitrak swarms reached the battle zone. Thousands of small fighters swarmed around larger ships like angry bees. Their diamond-hard claws tore through armor plating while their speed made them hard to target. For a moment it seemed like the coalition might win. Vorthan toughness, Zephyrian energy, and Chitrak numbers were wearing down the Krillian fleet. Then the Krillians revealed their true strength. Admiral Bloodscale's command ship fired a strange purple beam. Every Chitrak fighter it touched simply stopped moving. The drones inside died instantly, their minds burned out by some unknown weapon. Neural disruptor, Admiral Bloodscale laughed. Your bug creatures depend on simple brain patterns. Very easy to scramble. Hive Queen Zek watched in horror as thousands of her children fell silent. My drones! They're destroying the swarm connection. The Krillian ships pressed their advantage. They focused fire on wounded Vorthan dreadnoughts, preventing their armor from regenerating. They used area effect weapons to clear away Chitrak fighters. They targeted the Zephyrian energy masters, knowing that killing the pilots would disable entire ships. Hours passed. The coalition forces fought bravely, but they were losing. Admiral Steelclaw's flagship took heavy damage. Half his crew was dead or wounded. All ships fall back to secondary positions. We need to regroup. High Priestess Windcaller could barely stand. Her crystal skin had gone dark from energy exhaustion. I cannot maintain this level of output much longer. Hive Queen Zek reported terrible losses. 80% of my fighters are destroyed. The neural disruptors are too effective against the swarm. In the back of the formation, the small human fleet waited quietly. 6 modest destroyers hung in space, seemingly forgotten by both sides. They had not fired a single shot or made any aggressive moves. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, the Liberty Bell. Around him, his crew worked calmly at their stations. They showed none of the panic or desperation of the other coalition forces. Captain, Lieutenant Amy Price reported, I'm reading massive damage to coalition forces. Admiral Steelclaw is calling for technical support. Morrison nodded. Patch me through to all coalition commanders. All ships, this is Captain Morrison. His calm voice cut through the chaos. We're rerouting medical supplies to damaged vessels. New navigation data is coming through now. Communication relays are being reinforced. The humans worked efficiently to support their allies. Supply shuttles moved between ships, carrying ammunition and medical aid. Technical teams helped repair damaged systems. Human communication officers coordinated rescue efforts, but they still did not fight. Admiral Steelclaw's voice crackled over the radio. Captain Morrison, we need all available firepower. Why aren't your ships engaging the enemy? Morrison's reply was calm and professional. Admiral, we're providing maximum support from our current position. Our analysis suggests we can be most effective by maintaining our support role. The truth was different. While the other species fought and died, the humans had been doing something else entirely. They had been watching, they had been learning, They had been taking detailed notes about every Krillian ship movement, every weapon signature, every tactical decision. Lieutenant Price worked at her console, building complex computer models of enemy behavior. Sergeant Clark monitored Krillian communication frequencies, learning their battle language. Officer Ward tracked every ship's position and predicted their next moves. The humans were not hiding in the back because they were afraid. They were studying their prey. "Amy, how's the analysis coming?" Morrison asked quietly. "Almost complete, Captain. I have movement patterns for 247 Krillian vessels. Their tactical preferences are becoming clear." "Tony, weapon status?" Sergeant Clark smiled coldly. "All kinetic impactors loaded and targeted. The special armor-penetrating rounds are ready." "Lisa, communications?" Officer Ward adjusted her headset. "I've cracked their military encryption. I'm monitoring all command frequencies. I know what orders Admiral Bloodscale is giving before his own ships do." Morrison watched the battle rage in front of them. Coalition forces were being pushed back steadily. Soon the Krillians would break through to the defenseless colonies. But the humans had learned everything they needed to know. "Gentlemen, ladies," Morrison said quietly to his crew, "I think it's time we stopped pretending to be harmless." For the first time since the battle began, the human ships came alive with deadly purpose. The Coalition fleet was dying. Admiral Steelclaw watched his proud Vorthon warriors fall one by one. Ships that had seemed unstoppable just hours ago now drifted as burning wreckage. His own flagship shook under enemy fire, armor plates cracking, despite their legendary strength. "Hull breach on Deck 7, a Vorthon officer reported. "Engineering is requesting immediate assistance." High Priestess Windcaller collapsed on her crystal bridge. Her once bright skin had gone completely dark. The effort of channeling so much energy had nearly killed her. Around her, other Zephyrian masters lay unconscious or dead. "I cannot continue," she whispered into her communicator. "The energy flows are beyond my ability to control." Hive Queen Zek stared at her tactical display in horror. Of her original 1,000,000 fighter drones, fewer than 200,000 remained. The Krillian neural disruptors had shattered her swarm connection, leaving countless drones floating dead in space. "My children," she clicked sadly. "So many of my children are gone." The Krillian fleet pressed forward like a tide of death. Admiral Bloodscale's flagship led the advance, its regenerative armor already healing damage from the earlier fighting. Behind him, nearly 200 ships remained operational. "Coalition weaklings," Bloodscale's voice boomed across all frequencies. "Your pathetic species are no match for Krillian superiority. Soon we will feast on the bones of the Nexari colonies." The surviving Coalition ships fell back toward the edge of the system. They had fought bravely, using every special ability their species possessed. But it had not been enough. Then Captain Morrison's voice cut through the chaos. "Admiral Steelclaw, High Priestess Windcaller, Hive Queen Zek, this is Captain Morrison. We've completed our preliminary assessment. We're ready to engage." Silence filled the communication channels for a moment. Then Admiral Steelclaw's confused voice responded. "Captain Morrison, what assessment? Your ships have been sitting in the back for 6 hours while we've been dying out here." "Roger that, Admiral," Morrison replied calmly. "Amy, initiate Protocol 7. Tony, begin the dance. Lisa, you're our eyes and ears." Something changed in the human destroyers. Their movements became different, sharper, more purposeful. Ships that had been drifting cautiously suddenly moved like hunting wolves. "All human vessels, this is Lieutenant Price. Targeting solutions are uploaded. Kinetic impactors armed and ready. Begin synchronized strike pattern Delta." The other Coalition commanders watched in confusion as the human ships spread out in a complex formation. They moved with mechanical precision, each vessel covering the others in a deadly dance. "Captain Morrison," Admiral Steelclaw growled, "this is not the time for human games. We need every ship in the fight." "We are in the fight, Admiral," Morrison replied. "We've just been fighting it differently." The first Krillian ship died without warning. One moment the heavy cruiser Bloodseeker was advancing on the wounded Coalition fleet. The next moment it was an expanding cloud of debris. No massive explosion, no brilliant energy beams, just sudden, complete destruction. Admiral Bloodscale stared at his tactical display. What happened to the Bloodseeker? Report. Before anyone could answer, 2 more Krillian ships vanished. Then 3 more. Then 5. The human destroyers moved through space like ghosts. Their weapons made no bright flashes or dramatic explosions. They simply fired metal projectiles at incredible speeds, punching through Krillian armor like it was made of paper. Impossible, Admiral Bloodscale roared. The humans are the weakest species in the galaxy. How are they destroying my ships? Captain Morrison's voice remained calm and professional. Admiral Bloodscale, you're correct that humans are physically weak. But you've made a critical error in your assessment. Another Krillian ship exploded. Then another. Lieutenant Price, explain our weapons to the Admiral. Morrison continued. Amy Price's voice came over the communication channels. These are kinetic impactors, Admiral. Solid metal projectiles fired at 90% of light speed. They don't rely on energy or special abilities. Just basic physics. Mass times velocity equals penetration. Sergeant Clark added his own explanation. While you were fighting, we were studying your armor composition. These rounds are specifically designed to counter Krillian regenerative plating. They fragment inside the hull, making repair impossible. The human ships continued their deadly work. They moved in perfect coordination, each vessel supporting the others with mathematical precision. No wasted motion, no grand gestures, just efficient clinical destruction. Officer Ward's voice joined the explanation. We've been monitoring your communication frequencies, Admiral Bloodscale. We know your battle plans, your ship positions, your supply levels. We've been listening to your tactical discussions for the past 6 hours. Admiral Steelclaw watched in amazement as a single human destroyer outmaneuvered and destroyed 3 Krillian heavy cruisers. The small ship moved like it could predict every enemy action before it happened. How is this possible? He whispered. Humans are supposed to be weak, slow, defenseless. Morrison's reply came quietly but clearly. Admiral, we're not weak, we're patient, and patience is the deadliest weapon in the universe. The truth began to sink in as the Coalition commanders watched the humans work. These weren't the same passive support ships that had been hiding in the rear. These were apex predators that had been studying their prey for hours, learning every weakness, every pattern, every mistake. High Priestess Windcaller struggled to speak from her crystal chamber. Captain Morrison, if your people possess such power, why do you always remain in the background during battles? Morrison's answer sent chills through every alien commander listening. Because we don't fight for glory or honor, Priestess. We fight to win. And winning means the enemy never sees us coming until it's too late. The Krillian fleet tried to adapt to this new threat. Admiral Bloodscale ordered his ships to scatter, to use random movement patterns, to focus all fire on the human destroyers. Nothing worked. The humans had spent 6 hours building a complete tactical model of Krillian behavior. Every ship movement, every weapon signature, every communication pattern had been recorded and analyzed. The Krillians weren't fighting an enemy. They were fighting a prediction algorithm that knew their actions before they made them. All Coalition ships, this is Captain Morrison. The human commander's voice remained calm despite the carnage around them. Please maintain current positions. We have the situation under control. Sergeant Clark's voice added with grim satisfaction. Target-rich environment, Captain. Estimate 20 minutes until complete elimination of hostile forces. The galaxy's most feared warriors, Vorthon, Zephyrian, Chitrak, and dozens of other proud species, watched in stunned silence as the weak, passive humans systematically destroyed the entire Krillian fleet. And for the first time, they began to understand what real strength looked like. The Krillian fleet was being torn apart. Ships that had seemed unstoppable just an hour ago now fled in panic as human destroyers hunted them through space. Admiral Bloodscale watched his tactical display with growing horror as red dots, his ships, disappeared one by one. All vessels, execute evasive pattern Gamma, he roared into his communicator. Use regenerative armor to maximum effectiveness. Focus all fire on the human ships. The Krillian cruiser Fleshrender tried to follow these orders. Its captain fired everything he had at the human destroyer Liberty Bell. Plasma cannons, missile batteries, and energy torpedoes filled space with deadly fire. Captain Morrison's ship danced through the attack like it was choreographed. Every shot missed by inches. The Liberty Bell moved like its pilot could see the future. Target acquired, Lieutenant Price announced calmly. Firing kinetic impactor. A metal projectile no bigger than a coffee cup struck the Fleshrender at 90% of light speed. The ship simply came apart. Its regenerative armor tried to heal the damage, but there was nothing left to heal. Admiral Steelclaw watched from his damaged flagship. This is impossible. How can they predict enemy movement so perfectly? Officer Ward's voice answered over the communication channel. Admiral, we've been recording Krillian tactical patterns for 6 hours. Our computers have analyzed every ship movement, every evasive maneuver, every attack pattern. We know what they'll do before they do it. The human destroyers moved through the Krillian formation like wolves hunting sheep. Each ship covered the others with perfect timing. When one destroyer attacked, the others provided support. When enemies tried to surround them, they had already moved to safer positions. Sergeant Clark explained their strategy. Most species fight according to their nature, Admiral. Krillians are aggressive and proud. They always attack the strongest enemy first. They always try to use superior numbers. They're very predictable. High Priestess Windcaller struggled to understand what she was seeing. But Captain Morrison, your ships are so small compared to theirs. How can you destroy vessels 10 times your size? Morrison's reply was matter-of-fact. Size doesn't matter if your weapons can't hit the target. Priestess, and armor is useless against kinetic penetrators moving at relativistic speeds. The Liberty Bell demonstrated this principle by destroying a Krillian dreadnought. The massive enemy ship tried to ram the tiny human destroyer. Instead of running away, Morrison's ship accelerated directly toward the collision. At the last second, the Liberty Bell spun sideways and fired 3 kinetic rounds into the dreadnought's engine section. The huge ship broke in half, its momentum carrying the pieces past the human destroyer. Show-offs, Sergeant Clark muttered, but there was pride in his voice. Admiral Bloodscale tried desperately to rally his forces. All ships, form defensive, circle formation, concentrate fire, use overlapping fields of fire. The humans had already predicted this move. Lisa, execute communication protocol Zulu, Morrison ordered. Officer Ward smiled as she transmitted false orders on Krillian military frequencies. Her voice, perfectly mimicking Admiral Bloodscale's speech patterns, commanded half the Krillian fleet to break formation and attack the human ships individually. The confused Krillian captains followed the orders, thinking they came from their admiral. Instead of a unified defense, they scattered into small groups that the humans could destroy easily. My own ships won't obey me, Admiral Bloodscale screamed in rage. How are they controlling our communications? We've been monitoring your frequencies since the battle started, Officer Ward explained almost gently. Your encryption is based on rotating mathematical sequences. It took our computers about 20 minutes to crack completely. Hive Queen Zek watched the slaughter with a mixture of awe and fear. Captain Morrison, your people fight like a single organism. How do you coordinate so perfectly? Practice, Morrison replied simply. And we don't let pride or emotion cloud our judgment. Every move is calculated for maximum efficiency. The human ships demonstrated this efficiency by destroying 12 Krillian vessels in 3 minutes. They moved in a complex pattern that looked random, but was actually a mathematical algorithm designed to maximize damage while minimizing risk. Lieutenant Price provided running commentary. Target Alpha 7 destroyed. Target Beta 3 disabled. Target Gamma 12 attempting retreat vector 779. Adjusting intercept course. The Krillians tried everything they could think of. They used jamming devices against human communications. The humans switched to quantum entanglement channels. They deployed chaff and decoys. The humans tracked heat signatures and gravitational disturbances. They tried ramming attacks. The humans used the enemy's momentum against them. Admiral Bloodscale's flagship, The Death's Head was one of the last ships remaining. The massive dreadnought had enough firepower to destroy a small moon, but it couldn't hit the agile human destroyers. "Stand and fight, you cowards," Bloodscale roared. "Face us in honorable combat." Morrison's response was quiet but deadly. "Admiral, there's no such thing as honorable combat. There are only winners and losers. We intend to win." The Liberty Bell and 2 other human destroyers surrounded the Death's Head. They moved in a spiral pattern, firing kinetic rounds from different angles. The Krillian ship's armor began to fail under the coordinated assault. "This is not how warriors should fight," Admiral Steelclaw protested. "Where is the glory? Where is the test of strength?" Sergeant Clark's voice carried a hint of amusement. "Admiral, we left glory and strength to you folks. We'll take victory instead." The Death's Head tried one last desperate maneuver. It fired all weapons simultaneously while spinning to present a smaller target. The attack was impressive. It would have destroyed any normal enemy. The human ships had already moved out of the way. Their computers had calculated the optimal firing solution 3 seconds before Admiral Bloodscale gave the order. "Impossible," the Krillian admiral whispered as kinetic rounds punched through his ship's hull. "How did they know?" "Because you've been fighting the same way for the past 6 hours, Morrison explained patiently. "When threatened, you always fire everything at once. It's what your species does. We've been watching you do it over and over again." The Death's Head exploded in a brilliant flash of light. Admiral Bloodscale's voice faded into static. Space fell silent, except for the crackle of burning wreckage. Of the 300 Krillian ships that had threatened the Nexari colonies, none remained operational. The entire fleet had been destroyed in less than 2 hours. The Coalition commanders sat in stunned silence. They had watched the galaxy's most feared warriors, beings they considered weak and helpless, systematically destroy an enemy that had been defeating them for hours. "Captain Morrison," Admiral Steelclaw asked quietly, "what exactly are humans?" Morrison considered the question carefully. "We're a species that learned early that strength isn't about how hard you can hit. It's about hitting the right target at the right time. And the right time is when your enemy least expects it." The human destroyers regrouped near the Coalition fleet. They showed no damage, no signs of strain. They had fought the most one-sided battle in galactic history and made it look easy. "Besides," Sergeant Clark added with a slight smile, "someone has to keep an eye on all you naturally gifted species. Make sure you don't get yourselves killed." The implications of his words hung in space like a threat no one wanted to acknowledge. The silence in space was deafening. Where 300 Krillian warships had once threatened the innocent Nexari colonies, only debris remained. Twisted metal and burning plasma clouds drifted slowly through the void, marking the complete destruction of the galaxy's most feared military force. The Coalition fleet hung motionless, commanders and crews struggling to understand what they had just witnessed. The weak, passive humans had accomplished in 2 hours what the galaxy's strongest warriors could not do in 6. Admiral Rex Steelclaw stared at his tactical display, watching the 6 small human destroyers regroup in perfect formation. His massive flagship, the Iron Hammer, could crush any of those ships with a single blow. Yet he found himself afraid to make any sudden movements. "Captain Morrison," he said carefully, "your people have just achieved the impossible. The Krillian Empire has never lost an entire fleet before. How did you do it?" Morrison's voice came back calm and professional, as if destroying 300 enemy ships was routine business. "We observed, we learned, and we acted efficiently. Nothing more complicated than that, Admiral." High Priestess Sarah Windcaller struggled to speak from her crystal chamber. Her once bright skin remained dark from energy exhaustion. "But Captain, if humans possess such devastating power, why do you always stay in the rear during battles? Why let others fight and die while you watch?" The question hung in space like an accusation. Every alien commander wanted to hear the answer. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his words changed everything the galaxy thought it knew about power. "Priestess, we stay in the back because we don't fight for glory, honor, or to prove our strength. We fight to win. And winning means making sure the enemy never sees us coming until it's far too late. He paused, letting his words sink in. Around the coalition fleet, alien crews listened with growing unease. Every species in this coalition is stronger than us, faster than us, more naturally gifted than us. But you all fight like you expect. A fair fight. You show off your abilities, you announce your attacks, you fight according to your nature. Lieutenant Price's voice joined the explanation. Humans learned something else long ago. There's no such thing as a fair fight. There are only survivors and casualties, Sergeant Clark added with grim satisfaction. Besides, it's easier to study everyone when they think you're not a threat. We've been taking notes on coalition tactics for 3 years now, just in case. The words hit the coalition leaders like a physical blow. Every battle they had fought alongside humans, every strategy session, every demonstration of their species, special abilities. The humans had been recording and analyzing everything. Hive Queen Zek's translator device clicked nervously. You have been studying us? Your own allies? Officer Ward answered matter-of-factly. We study everyone, Queen Zek. Knowledge is survival. We know exactly how every species in this coalition fights, what weapons they use, what tactics they prefer. We know their strengths and weaknesses better than they do. She paused, then added something that made everyone's blood run cold. We have detailed battle plans for defeating any coalition species, should it ever become necessary. Admiral Steelclaw's voice cracked slightly. Battle plans? Against your allies? Morrison's reply was gentle but terrifying. Admiral, we hope those plans never need to be used. But hope is not a strategy. Preparation is. A holographic display appeared near the human fleet, showing tactical analyses of every major galactic species. Years of careful observation and study, all organized into comprehensive databases. Vorthan forces rely on frontal assault and superior armor, Morrison explained like a teacher giving a lesson. Counter-strategy involves mobility warfare and flanking maneuvers. Estimated victory probability, 94%. Zephyrian energy masters are devastating but drain quickly, Lieutenant. Price continued. Counter-strategy involves defensive positions and endurance tactics. Estimated victory probability, 87%. Chitrak swarms overwhelm through numbers but lack individual intelligence, Sergeant Clark added. Counter-strategy involves neural disruption and command targeting. Estimated victory probability, 96%. The data continued for dozens of species. Every alien race in the coalition had been analyzed, categorized, and prepared for defeat. Admiral Steelclaw found his voice. Why? Why study us like enemies when we're supposed to be allies? Morrison's answer revealed the true nature of human thinking. Because allies can become enemies. Governments change, leaders die, circumstances shift. The species that survive are the ones who prepare for every possibility. He let that sink in before continuing. But there's something more important you need to understand. We could defeat any species that fights predictably. The key word is predictably. Most species fight according to their nature. Vorthan's charge, Zephyrians channel energy, Chitrak swarm. Humans adapt. High Priestess Windcaller asked the question that was haunting every alien mind. How many species could you defeat if you chose to become conquerors instead of allies? Morrison considered this carefully. Any species that relies on natural abilities instead of technology. Any species that fights for glory instead of results. Any species that announces their intentions instead of hiding them. Officer Ward pulled up star charts showing human territory, small scattered colonies that seemed insignificant compared to the vast empires around them. But conquest was never our goal. We learned something else that most species missed. What? Admiral Steelclaw asked, though he dreaded the answer. The best victory is the one where your enemies become your friends, Morrison explained. And your friends never realized they could have been your enemies. The full scope of human strategy became clear. For decades, humans had positioned themselves as the weak, harmless support species. They had let others take credit for victories while quietly studying everyone's capabilities. They had made themselves seem indispensable for logistics and technical support. while building the most comprehensive military intelligence network in galactic history. You've been protecting us, Hive Queen Zek realized. All this time, you've been the strongest species in the coalition, but you've been protecting everyone else. And learning from everyone else, Sergeant Clark added. Every species we've fought alongside has taught us something new. Your hive mind coordination, Zephyrian, energy control, Vorthan durability. We've studied it all. Morrison's final words carried the weight of absolute truth. We stay in the back not because we can't fight in the front. We stay in the back because we fight better from where no one expects us to strike. The coalition fleet began its journey home, having saved the Nixari colonies from destruction. But the galaxy's power structure had fundamentally changed. Every species now understood that the quiet humans taking notes in the corner weren't there because they were weak. They were there because they were patient, they were learning, and they were always 3 steps ahead of everyone else, Admiral. Steelclaw looked once more at the debris field that had been the Krillian fleet. The toughest species in the galaxy, he murmured to himself. What was that, Admiral? Morrison asked. Nothing, Captain. Just thinking about how we finally learned why humans stay in the back. Morrison's response carried just a hint of a smile. And now you know, Admiral, sometimes the most terrifying warriors are the ones who never let you see them coming. The human destroyers took their position at the rear of the formation, exactly where they belonged, behind everyone else, watching everything, taking notes, and quietly preparing for whatever came next. The galaxy had learned its lesson. The humans were exactly where they wanted to be,